Sega's going to release a Sega Genesis Mini without my favorite games. How could they do this to me? It doesn't make any sense. Not one bit of sense that they... I'll write them a letter. Yeah, they'll have to listen to me. The 80s and 90s were great times to be a kid. Join me as I dive into the world of movies, music, video games and toys, and explore what made these decades so great. This is the Big Retro Show. What to write? What to write? Oh, okay, I know. Dear Sega, I love you, but we have to talk. Why is Rambo 3 missing? It's a rare example of when a movie-based game is actually good. In case you forgot, the game closely follows the plot of the film as you are sent to Afghanistan to rescue Colonel Troutman from the Russians. Don't rob us of the chance to rescue Colonel Troutman. This was one of the very first games I got for the Sega Genesis back in 1990, and I loved it. What I liked about this game was the overhead run and gun feel. It sort of reminded me of a mix between Contra and Commando. The game was challenging with its one-hit deaths, but you could easily beat it in one afternoon. Most of the early Sega games were like this. Fun as hell, but easily beaten. I really dig the way the game made you feel like you were in the movie. And who doesn't love using the iconic weapons that Rambo used in the film? The graphics at the time showcased the mega power that was inside of the system we all know and love. It's too bad this one won't appear on the Sega Genesis Mini. And that's just one of the games that you missed on the Sega Genesis Mini. I know of several others. Let's talk about one of the only sports games in the arcade that mattered, NBA Jam. The game was basically a 2-on-2 basketball tournament that featured some of the hottest NBA players of the time. What made this game incredibly fun was the way that you could basically push and foul the other players to steal the ball. Midway used the digitized images of the real-life players much in the same way that it did for Mortal Kombat, and the result added a bit of reality and street cred to NBA Jam. The other cool aspect of this game was being on fire! You got to be on fire if you hit 3 straight shots in a row. Being on fire gave you unlimited boost, which allowed you to move faster, push your opponents, and dunk on them. The voices of the announcers also added to the production value of the game. Phrases like "Boom shakalaka" and "He's on fire" made the game more fun. You missed Mercs! Mercs was another arcade port made by Capcom and was a successor to the excellent Capcom classic Commando. The game was basically an overhead run-and-gun shooter that placed you in the shoes of a covert mercenary whose mission it was to rescue the president. That's why the game is called Mercs. The opportunity to play this game with a friend made this game a must-have for any Sega Genesis owner. The gameplay was similar to Commando with its 8-directional controls and 2-button layout. One button was used for firing your main weapon, and the other was used for launching a grenade at your enemies. Simple controls worked really well sometimes. They threw a variety of enemies and vehicles at you and offered boss fights, much like its predecessor Commando. Some of the environments in the game were interactive. You could frequently hijack jeeps or machine gun turrets to dispatch your enemies. You guys should have included Mercs on the Sega Genesis Mini, Sega. How could you forget about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist? It was one of the best beat-em-ups, second only to the Streets of Rage series on the almighty Sega Genesis. The game was a Sega exclusive and followed the Toydles on their quest to bring down the evil Shredder, who used the powerful Hyperstone to shrink Manhattan. The game was every bit as good as its Super Nintendo cousin, Turtles in Time. The gameplay was simple: choose a turtle and kick some shell. Hyperstone Heist consisted of 5 stages and was a game easily beaten on a Saturday afternoon. I loved that. Turn on some turtles, beat the game, and move on to something else. I didn't own this game back in the day, so having it on a Sega Genesis Mini would have been a cool thing. And then there was a time that I bought a Sega Master System instead of a Nintendo. I never thought that you would leave me hanging, Sega.
E-SWAT.
E-SWAT City Under Siege was a mighty fine game, and one that you will not find on the Sega Genesis Mini when it releases in September, which is a travesty. The game was a side-scrolling shooter in which your job was to save the city from the lowlifes. You started the game out with just a gun and a badge, and I can remember thinking, when do I get to be the cyborg? I found it a little bit annoying to have to start out as a normal dude, but after 2 stages you were rewarded with a cyborg suit and the upgraded weapons. While you yourself became powerful, so did the bad guys, and this was one of the most challenging games on the Sega Genesis. The game sort of reminded me of the whole RoboCop craze back in the day. It definitely had some similarities, but that's not a bad thing as I love RoboCop. This was one of the games that I remember having as a kid with a Sega Genesis, and I would have loved it if Sega would have put this on the Sega Genesis Mini. But no, they didn't. You gypped us out of the Revenge of Shinobi, Sega. Let me just say, this was the very first game that I bought for the Sega Genesis, along with Golden Axe, and I was so looking forward to playing it on the Mini. What could be said about this awesome game that hasn't already been said? First off, this game was nothing like the original Shinobi of the arcades. For one, you were dressed in a white ninja outfit. In the Shinobi arcades, you were dressed in a black. The other thing about this game is that if you didn't have the unlimited Shuriken code, you would often run out of ninja stars and have to kill fools with your ninja sword. Another cool element of the game was the ability to double jump and rain down Shuriken on your enemies. Revenge of Shinobi gave you 4 forms of ninja magic, each helpful at different times. There was even one form of ninja magic that took your own life but did massive damage on your enemies. The other major difference between the arcade Shinobi game and the Genesis Revenge of Shinobi was that Revenge had a life bar. No more one-hit deaths. But this didn't make the game easy. It was one of the more challenging titles in Sega's library. Several characters made cameo appearances in the originally released version of this game, including Rambo, Jackie Chan, Batman, Spider-Man, and Godzilla. I believe that in subsequent versions of the game, Sega replaced these characters because of copyright issues. I wonder if this is the reason that Sega did not include it on the Mini. Oh well. I'm still gonna support you, Sega, and buy the Sega Genesis Mini. I'll just have to wait for somebody to hack it so I can add some more games to it. Well, gotta go. Your pal, Lowe's.